Michael Sterling stood motionless at the threshold of his penthouse, staring at the young woman kneeling on the polished marble floor of his living room. The bright yellow rubber gloves on her hands were far too large for her slender fingers. Her burgundy uniform with the white collar looked as if it had been borrowed from someone twice her size. This was not Mrs. Hannah. This girl was maybe 24 years old, her blonde hair tied up in a messy bun, and she clearly had no idea that she had just completely disrupted his carefully ordered world. The girl looked up and caught sight of him. Her eyes widened in panic. "Mr. Sterling, I am so sorry. I did not hear you come in." She scrambled to her feet so quickly that she nearly knocked over her bucket of cleaning water. "I am Zoe Miller, Mrs. Hannah's daughter." Michael frowned, his brow furrowing as he set his briefcase down. Mrs. Hannah had worked for him for 5 years. She was discreet, quiet, practically invisible. Exactly the kind of help he required. She appeared twice a week, cleaned his sprawling Seattle penthouse, and vanished before he even had a chance to notice her presence. She had never mentioned a daughter. "Where is Mrs. Hannah?" he asked coldly, removing his expensive wool coat. Zoe bit her lip, looking down at her boots. "Mom! She slipped on the ice in the parking lot last week. She broke her leg in 2 places. The doctors say she will have to wear a cast for at least 8 weeks. The words spilled out of her in a rush, fast and nervous. "We could not afford to lose this job. Mom was very worried about you, about the house, about everything. So I thought, well, I work as a waitress in the evenings, but in the mornings, I am free, and I study interior design in the evenings. But that does not conflict with Mom's hours, so please, do not fire her." Michael interrupted her by raising a hand. His head was already beginning to ache from this stream of information. I asked, "Where is Mrs. Hannah?" "At the hospital. I mean, not right now. She is at home. She came back from the hospital yesterday." Zoe looked as though she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. "I am sorry. Mom always says I talk too much." Michael sighed. This was a complication he did not need. He had a vital meeting with venture capitalists in 3 hours, a presentation to finish, and the last thing he needed was this chaotic energy in his sanctuary. "How old are you?" he asked, looking at her more closely. 24. "Do you have experience with cleaning?" Zoe straightened up, trying to look confident despite her oversized gloves. "I have been helping my mother since I was a child. I know how to polish marble, how to wash delicate fabrics, how to remove red wine stains from a wool rug." She hesitated, then added, "And I also know that this gray wall makes this entire space feel very depressing." Michael blinked. "Excuse me? I am sorry." Zoe covered her mouth with her hand. "That is none of my business. I just study interior design, and sometimes I cannot help but notice." "The color of my wall is not up for discussion," Michael said dryly. "I need someone who cleans discreetly and efficiently. Can you do that?" "Yes, of course. Absolutely." Zoe nodded vigorously. "You will not even know I am here, like a quiet cleaning ghost." Michael had his doubts that this girl could be quiet for 5 minutes, but his options were limited. Mrs. Hannah was reliable, and finding a replacement in the middle of the week would be problematic. Fine, 8 weeks until Mrs. Hannah returns. The same days, the same hours, the same rate. Zoe's face brightened like the sun. "Thank you. Thank you so much. You will not regret this. I promise." Michael nodded and turned toward his home office down the hall. He had work to do, but just as he closed his door, he heard something that made him freeze. Music. Traditional jazz, loud and joyful, flowed from the living room, and then a voice. Zoe was singing, completely off-key, the words to an old love song. Michael closed his eyes and massaged his temples. These were going to be the longest 8 weeks of his life. But downstairs, Zoe smiled, scrubbing the marble floor, thinking the exact same thing. This was going to be interesting. Michael tried to focus on his presentation for the investors, but it was impossible. The music from downstairs changed to something even louder. A modern remix of a classic tune, and Zoe's singing, while still completely tone-deaf, sounded even more enthusiastic. He stood up from his desk, ready to go downstairs and request silence, when he heard her voice right outside his office door. "Mr. Sterling, I am sorry to bother you, but why do you have so many books on business and management, and not a single novel?" Michael opened the door abruptly. Zoe stood there with a mop in one hand and a rag in the other, looking at his bookshelves in the hallway with genuine curiosity. "That is none of your business," he replied sharply. "Of course not," Zoe agreed quickly. "But you know, reading only about work is a bit like eating only one product. A person needs variety. Chocolate cake is delicious, but you cannot eat only chocolate cake your whole life, right?" Michael narrowed his eyes. "Did you just compare business literature to chocolate cake?" "Well, yes." Zoe smiled uncertainly. "It was meant to be a compliment. Chocolate cake is delicious." "I have work to do," Michael said slowly, as if speaking to a child. "Could you please clean more quietly?" "More quietly?" Zoe frowned. "But music helps with cleaning. It makes the time go by faster. Not for someone trying to concentrate." "Oh," Zoe looked genuinely surprised. "I did not think about that. I am sorry." She pulled out her phone and turned the music down. "Is that better?" "It would be perfect without music, but then it would be so quiet and sad." Zoe tilted her head. "Do you always work in total silence? That cannot be healthy. People need music, laughter, life around them." Michael felt the tension rising in his jaw. Mrs. Hannah never had a problem working in silence. Mom is different. Well, I cannot be quiet." Zoe shrugged helplessly. "I tried, really. But then I start thinking out loud. And that is even worse. For example, right now, I am thinking that this wall color is truly very depressing, and that you should have more plants in this house, and that your refrigerator is full of expired yogurt." "You were checking my refrigerator?" Michael's voice was dangerously quiet. Zoe froze. "I had to wash it. It was part of Mom's duties, and I could not help but notice that you have 8 yogurts, of which 6 expired 2 weeks ago." Michael closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Please, just please finish cleaning in silence, if it is possible." "Sure, absolutely. I will be as quiet as a mouse." Zoe made a gesture of locking her lips and throwing the key over her shoulder. Michael returned to his office and closed the door. For the next 10 minutes, there was blessed silence. He began to breathe a sigh of relief. Maybe she could do it after all. "You know what is funny?" Zoe's voice drifted from the hallway. "Mom said you almost never eat at home, only takeout. That cannot be healthy. My father always said, home-cooked food heals the soul." Michael opened the door again. "I thought you were going to be quiet." "I was for 10 minutes. That was a long time." Zoe was now kneeling, scrubbing the hallway floor. "But then I thought about all that takeout food, and I had to say something. You know, restaurant dumplings never have as much love as homemade ones." "Love? Yes. Mom always says the secret to good dumplings is the love you put into kneading the dough." Zoe looked at him with a smile. "Maybe one day I will bring you some of ours. Mom makes the best dumplings in all of Seattle." Michael did not know what to say. He stood there, looking at this girl kneeling on his floor, talking about love in dumplings, with such enthusiasm as if it were the most important thing in the world. For the first time in years, he felt something strange, something warm in his chest, something that might have been amusement. "Please finish cleaning," he said finally. But his voice was softer than before. "Yes, sir." Zoe saluted with her rag, leaving a wet spot on her forehead. When Michael returned to his office, for the first time that day, he smiled. This girl was impossible. Completely, absolutely impossible. But his house, for the first time in years, felt alive. A week later, Michael returned home earlier than usual, carrying a briefcase full of documents for the most important contract of his career. The meeting with investors from Germany was in 2 days, and he still did not have everything organized. Papers, notes, drafts, everything was scattered across his office in a chaotic system that only he understood, or at least, that is what he thought. As he entered the house, he saw Zoe coming down the stairs with a carton full of colorful files. Her hair was tied up with a bandana, and there was a smudge of dust on her nose. "What are you doing with my documents?" he asked sharply, feeling panic grip his stomach. Zoe jumped, nearly dropping the carton. "Mr. Sterling, you are still here. I mean, you should not be at work. Answer the question. What are you doing with my papers?" "I am organizing them," she said enthusiastically. "I went to clean your office today and I saw the chaos. Papers everywhere, on the desk, on the floor, some even behind the radiator. How do you find anything in there?" Michael ran up the stairs, brushing past her. When he opened the office door, he stopped dead. His desk was clean. Completely, unnervingly clean. All the piles of papers had vanished. The walls now had a colorful mural, a large corkboard with documents pinned according to some system he did not understand. Yellow, blue, green, and pink sticky notes covered everything like a rainbow eruption. "What did you do?" he whispered, feeling as though the world was collapsing. Zoe entered behind him, still holding the carton. "I created a system. Look, yellow is contracts to sign, blue is technical documents, green is correspondence, pink is deadlines." She walked up to the board, pointing with pride. "And here I created a timeline for the entire project. Each stage has its own section, with dates and responsible people. See, it is logical and visually clear. I need to find the Mueller-Schmidt contract. Immediately. Blue section. Third file from the left. Binders are alphabetical." Zoe handed him the blue file. Michael opened it with trembling hands. The contract was there, along with all the addendums organized chronologically. But that was not the end. Zoe had attached small, colorful sticky notes with memos. Page 7 requires the signature of the CFO. Appendix B. Check dates before the meeting. "How did you know?" he began. "I read very quickly," Zoe replied with a smile. "And I study interior design, so I understand systems of spatial organization. I thought I could apply the same principles to documents. Information is also a kind of space, is it not?" Michael sat heavily in his chair, staring at the board. It was brilliant. Completely different from his way of working, but brilliant. He could now see the entire project at once. All the dependencies, all the deadlines. "Are you angry?" Zoe asked quietly, losing her confidence. "Mom always says I am too invasive, that I cross the line. Can I put it all back the way it was?" "No." The word escaped Michael before he could think. "No. This is good. Very good. Actually," Zoe's face brightened. "Really?" At that moment, Michael's phone rang. His assistant informed him that the Germans had moved up the meeting. They wanted to see him tonight, in 3 hours. Michael felt sweat cover his forehead. He had no time for preparation. He barely had time to review everything. But now, looking at Zoe's system, he saw everything he needed, organized and ready. He could do this. "I must prepare for the meeting," he said, already opening the files. "An important meeting. Very important." "Can I help?" Zoe joked. "I study interior design, but I am quite good at presentations." Michael looked at her. This girl in a cleaning uniform with dust on her nose, who had just saved his biggest contract without even knowing it. "You could stay. Hand me documents that I need to switch. I need someone who understands this system." Zoe's eyes widened. "Really? But I am the housekeeper." "No," Michael said slowly, realizing the truth. "You are much more." That evening, with the help of Zoe's system and her quick thinking, Michael conducted the best presentation of his life. The Germans signed the contract on the spot. And when everyone left, Michael looked at Zoe, still in her cleaning uniform, and thought, how did she do it? How did this impossible girl change everything? The next morning, Michael waited for Zoe with an envelope in his hand. All night he had thought about what she had done, how she had saved his biggest contract, without even realizing it. He had prepared a bonus, a generous bonus, that would show his gratitude. Zoe arrived at 8 o'clock in the morning, as always, carrying her bag with cleaning supplies. She looked tired. She must have had an evening shift at the restaurant yesterday. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," she said with a smile. "How did the meeting go? Did they sign the contract?" "Yes, thanks to you." Michael pulled out the envelope. "I wanted to thank you. This is a bonus for your work with the documents." Zoe looked at the envelope but did not take it. "I did not do it for the money." "I know, but you did it because—" Zoe hesitated, looking for words. "Because you clearly needed help, and because I hate clutter, and because," she smiled lightly, "because you were so stressed all week that it hurt to watch." Michael did not know what to say. No one had ever refused his money before. "And besides," Zoe added, taking off her coat, "if you really want to thank me, then stop eating junk takeout food." "Excuse me? I saw pizza boxes in the trash yesterday, and last week there were Chinese cartons, and all those expired yogurts." Zoe shook her head in disapproval. "You run a big company, you have a beautiful house, but you eat like a college student in a dorm." Michael felt a strange mixture of irritation and amusement. "I do not have time to cook. Nobody has time. But people manage somehow." Zoe reached into her bag and pulled out a plastic container. "Mom made too many pierogies yesterday. She told me to bring you some. Do not let them go to waste." Michael took the container. It was still warm. Through the plastic, he could smell the dill and butter. "Did your mother know you stayed yesterday to help me with the meeting?" "Of course. I told her over the phone. She was very proud, though also a little worried that I crossed the line." "You did not cross the line," Michael said quietly. "You saved me." Zoe looked at him, something soft in her gaze. "So, we are even. You gave Mom a job when she really needed it. You let me replace her when she got hurt. It is the least I could do." For a moment, they stood in silence, looking at each other. Then Zoe clapped her hands. "Well, today I have to wash the windows and vacuum the library. And if you allow it, I would like to bring some plants. This house needs life." "Plants?" "Yes. A ficus or a monstera. Something green. It makes the space breathe." Zoe leaned in conspiratorially. "And besides, they say talking to plants is good for mental health. You could try it, instead of talking only to the computer." "I do not talk to the computer." "But you yell at it. I heard you last week, how you cursed because the connection froze." Michael felt himself blushing. It was frustrating. "That is exactly why you need a plant and proper dumplings." Zoe pointed at the container. "Heat them up in a pan with butter. Not in the microwave. Never in the microwave." "Are you always this bossy?" "Only when it comes to food and interior design." Zoe smiled broadly. "But Mom says, that is one of my best traits. I care for people, even if they do not care for themselves." Michael watched as she walked to the kitchen for a bucket, humming under her breath. He looked at the container of pierogies in his hands, at the envelope with the bonus she refused to take, at the colorful system in his office that had changed his life. This girl was like a tornado. She had fallen into his ordered, sterile world and turned everything upside down. And the strangest thing was that he liked it. That evening, Michael heated the pierogies exactly as Zoe had instructed, in a pan with butter. They were the best he had eaten in his life. Sitting alone in his big dining room, for the first time in years eating home-cooked food, Michael thought about Zoe, about her smile, about her talkativeness, about how much she had changed his life in just 1 week. And for the first time, he wondered what would happen when those 8 weeks were over. 2 weeks later, Michael had a problem. He had been invited to a charity gala, one of those elegant events he hated, but had to attend for business reasons. The problem was not the event itself. The problem was the fact that there would be dancing. Traditional Polish polonaise. And Michael had no idea how to dance the polonaise. That day, Zoe arrived at the house as always, singing something about flowers and love. Michael waited for her in the living room, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Mr. Sterling, everything okay?" she asked, taking off her coat. "You look like you saw a ghost." "I need a favor," he said with hesitation. Zoe raised her eyebrows. "A favor from me? I have an event on Saturday. There will be a traditional dance, a polonaise." Michael ran a hand through his hair. "I do not know how to dance." For a moment, Zoe just stared at him. Then she burst out laughing, a loud, joyful laugh that filled the entire living room. "You do not know how to dance a polonaise? But you are Polish." "I was too busy building a company to go to dance lessons," Michael grumbled defensively. Zoe wiped tears of laughter from her eyes. "Oh my God, that is okay. Okay, I can teach you, but we only have 3 days, so you must be a diligent student." "Seriously? You will help me?" "On one condition." Zoe crossed her arms, trying to look serious, but the corners of her mouth still trembled with a smile. "Stop calling me Ms. Miller. That is too formal when we are going to be dancing together." "Fine, Zoe. Better?" Zoe clapped her hands. "Well then, let's start. But first I have to move the furniture." For the next 10 minutes, Zoe transformed Michael's elegant living room into a dance floor, pushing aside sofas, moving the rug, creating space. Michael stood to the side, feeling increasingly foolish. "Okay." Zoe placed her phone on the shelf, playing the traditional Polonaise music. "The basics are simple. It is a 3-step dance. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Watch my feet." She demonstrated the steps, moving with grace and lightness that surprised him. She no longer looked like a housekeeper in an oversized uniform. She looked like a dancer, confident and beautiful. "Now you try." Michael tried. He really tried, but his legs refused to cooperate with his brain. He went left instead of right. His feet tangled, and he nearly fell. Zoe burst out laughing again. "Mr. Michael, you are the most successful businessman I know, but you cannot count to 3. "It is harder than it looks," Michael defended himself, feeling his cheeks burn. "Let's try together. Give me your hand." When Zoe took his hand in hers, Michael felt a strange electric sensation running through his arm. Her other hand rested lightly on his shoulder, and his own hand found a place on her waist. It was the first time he had touched her that way. "Okay, feel the music. 1, 2, 3. I step back, you step forward." They began to move. Michael immediately stepped on her foot. "Sorry, it is okay. Let's try again." He stepped on her foot again, and again, and again. "Maybe you should stick to contracts," Zoe teased. But her eyes were warm, without malice. "Maybe I should hire a professional dancer as a double," Michael replied dryly. "No, we do not give up." Zoe cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. "Look at me, not at your feet. Feel the rhythm and listen to the music." They tried again. This time, Michael focused on her eyes, dark, full of encouragement and patience. He stopped thinking about the steps and just let his body follow her. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. "Yes, that is it." Zoe beamed with pride. "You did it." They continued dancing across the living room, awkwardly, with a few stumbles, but together. The music filled the space, and for the first time, Michael understood what Zoe meant when she talked about life in the house. It was not the walls, furniture, or decor. It was this moment. Laughter, music, human warmth. "You see," Zoe said when the music ended, but they still stood close, not letting go. "You are not hopeless. You just need someone to show you how to stop thinking and start feeling." Michael looked into her eyes, feeling his heart beating too fast. "Thank you," he whispered. And Zoe, for the first time since they met, had nothing to say. The storm came without warning, typical for a Seattle spring, sudden and relentless. Michael was at the office, finishing a meeting, when his phone rang. It was Zoe. "I am sorry to bother you," she said, her voice barely audible over the sound of the wind. "The bus broke down. I will be late." "Where are you?" he asked immediately. "At the corner of 4th and Pike. But do not worry. I will wait for the next one." "Do not move. I am coming for you." 15 minutes later, Michael saw her standing at the bus stop, completely soaked. Her hair was plastered to her face. Her clothes were wet through, and she was shivering like a leaf. Something squeezed his heart at the sight. He stopped the car and jumped out, not caring that he was getting wet himself. He took off his blazer and wrapped it around Zoe. You are completely soaked. It is just water, Zoe tried to joke, but her teeth were chattering. Get in immediately. In the car, Michael turned the heating to the maximum. Zoe huddled into herself, trying to get warm. I am sorry for the mess, she muttered. I will ruin your seat. Worry about yourself, not the seat. Michael cast her a sharp look. You could catch a cold. Why didn't you wait in a store? I did not want to be even later. Mom always said punctuality is respect. Your health is more important than punctuality, Michael grumbled, driving through the flooded streets. When they arrived at his house, Zoe was still shivering. Michael made a decision. First, you will take a hot shower, then have some tea. Discussion is not an option. But I should be cleaning. Zoe, his voice was firm. Shower. Now. When she came out of the bathroom 20 minutes later, dressed in his oversized gray sweatpants with her hair wrapped in a towel, Michael was waiting with a cup of steaming tea. Do you feel better? Yes, thank you. Zoe took the cup, warming her hands on it. That was very nice of you. I could not leave you there. Michael sat opposite her. Besides, your mother would kill me if something happened to you. Zoe laughed. That is true. Mom can be terrifying when she wants. I will tell you something, Michael began. Since you have been working here, this house has changed. It is not just about cleanliness or organization. It is warmer, more like a home, and not just a place where I sleep. Zoe looked at him, surprised. Really? Really? Michael hesitated, then added, and I am changing too. I eat home-cooked food. I listen to music. Yesterday I even bought a plant. You bought a plant? Zoe's eyes widened. Which one? A ficus, just like you advised. He smiled lightly. The salesman at the store was shocked that I even knew what a ficus was. Zoe burst out laughing, that honest, joyful laugh that always lit up the room. Can you take me home? She asked after a while. I do not want to ride the bus in this. Of course, but... Michael stood up, walking to the window. The downpour had intensified. Maybe we should wait until the storm lets up a bit. Okay. Zoe curled up with the cup. In that case, maybe we can continue our dance lessons. The gala is already on Saturday. Michael looked at her, the small figure in his oversized sweats, with pink cheeks from the hot tea, with eyes full of warmth. Fine, he agreed, but this time without shoes. My feet need a rest. Zoe laughed and set the tea aside. Michael turned on the music and held out his hand. They danced in the living room while the storm raged outside. This time, Michael almost didn't step on her feet. They moved together naturally, as if they had been dancing for years. You are making progress, Zoe whispered. I have a good teacher. When the song finished, they did not pull away. They stood close, too close. Michael's heart was beating like crazy. Zoe looked at him, and in her eyes, he saw something that made him forget to breathe. But then her phone rang. It was Mrs. Hannah, worrying about her daughter in the storm. The moment popped like a bubble. Michael drove Zoe home an hour later. The storm had eased, but something between them had changed. Something bigger than the storm, more dangerous than the rain. When he drove back and looked at her small, humble house, so different from his villa, he felt a sting of something in his heart. It was the gap between their worlds, and for the first time in his life, Michael regretted that this gap existed. Saturday evening, Michael stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his bow tie. The charity gala was at the most expensive hotel in Seattle, full of businessmen, politicians, and elites. Exactly the kind of event he knew like the back of his hand. But this time, he felt different. Nervous, excited. He wanted to impress Zoe, to show her that he had mastered the Polonaise. When his phone rang, he smiled. It was her. Good luck tonight, she said cheerfully. Remember, 1, 2, 3, and do not think, just feel. I will remember. Thanks for everything, Zoe. You are welcome. The gala was exactly as he had expected. Elegant, at times boring, full of artificial smiles, and talk about business. But when the Polonaise began, Michael felt a surge of confidence. The steps Zoe had taught him came back naturally. He danced with the wife of one of the investors, and to his own surprise, he did not step on her once. After the dance, he decided he would do something different, something spontaneous. He slipped out of the gala early and went to a small diner that Zoe had mentioned one day. "The best grilled cheese in all of Seattle," she had said with a sparkle in her eyes. Michael had never been there before. The place was modest, simple, full of ordinary people, workers after their shift, students with books, older couples over tea. He ordered a grilled cheese and a soup, feeling strangely out of place in his expensive suit. But the food was incredible, simple, honest, full of flavor, nothing like the artificial dishes from elegant restaurants. Then, an idea came to him. On Monday, Michael waited for Zoe with a proposal. "I would like to invite you to dinner," he said before she could even take off her coat. "Tomorrow evening, if you want." Zoe froze. "Dinner? With me?" "Yes, as a thank you for the dance lessons and for everything else." Something flashed across Zoe's face. Joy, hesitation, uncertainty, everything at once. "Okay," she agreed finally, quietly. "But nothing fancy, okay? I do not feel well in those elegant places." "I have a better idea," Michael smiled. On Friday, he took her to that small diner, the same one he had been to on Saturday. Zoe was dressed simply. Jeans, a simple sweater, hair down. She looked beautiful. "The diner? Seriously? You said, 'Here is the best grilled cheese in Seattle.' I had to check." They sat at a small plastic table, ordered grilled cheese and soup. They talked about everything and nothing. About her design studies, about his beginnings in business, about funny childhood memories. "You know what is the best thing about diners?" Zoe asked. "They are real. Everyone here is themselves. Nobody pretends to be someone else." Michael looked at her honest smile, at the way she laughed loudly, not caring who was watching, at how naturally she felt in this humble place. "You are right," he said quietly. "This is better than any elegant restaurant." When they were leaving, Zoe accidentally tripped on the stairs. Michael caught her instinctively, his hands on her waist, her hands on his shoulders. They stood like that for a moment, too long for an accidental trip. "Thank you," Zoe whispered. "Always." But on the way home, Michael noticed something that made his heart stop. Zoe's best friend, Sarah, was standing across the street, looking at them with concern. The next day, Zoe came to work quieter than usual. She didn't sing, she didn't talk, she didn't comment on his decorative choices. "Did something happen?" Michael asked finally. Zoe turned. In her eyes was something sad. "Sarah saw us yesterday. She warned me." Her voice trembled. "She said, 'I am falling in love with you, and that it can only end in pain.' Zoe. And the worst thing is that she is right." Zoe clenched her fists. "You are my employer, a businessman, a millionaire, and I am just a housekeeper, the daughter of your housekeeper. You are not. I am." Her voice was firm but full of pain. "And when those 8 weeks are over, I will go back to being a waitress and a student, and you will go back to your world. A world I do not belong to." Michael wanted to deny it. He wanted to say she was wrong, that it could be different. But the words stuck in his throat, because deep down, he knew she was right. Their worlds were too different, and he was not sure if he was brave enough to jump across that gap. For the next few days, the atmosphere in Michael's house was tense. Zoe still came to work, but something had changed. She had gone back to being quiet and professional, just like her mother. She didn't sing, didn't comment, didn't reorganize anything without asking. Michael hated it. He missed her laughter, her talkativeness, how she filled the house with life. That day, he had an important meeting at home with Diana Kowalski, his business partner. Diana was 5 years older than him. Elegant, educated, from good Seattle elite circles. They always kept their relationship purely professional, though Michael knew she hoped for something more. Diana arrived promptly at 10 o'clock, dressed in a beige Chanel-style suit, with her hair pinned in a perfect bun. Her gaze immediately fell on the changes in the house. Colorful pillows, plants, curtains. "Interesting changes," she said with a cool smile. Apparently, someone here introduced a feminine touch. At that moment, Zoe came out of the kitchen, carrying a tray with coffee. Dressed in her burgundy uniform with her hair tied back simply, she looked like what she was: a housekeeper. "Good morning," she said quietly, setting the coffee on the table. Diana examined her from top to bottom. "You are new? What happened to Mrs. Hannah?" "This is her daughter," Michael explained quickly. "Mrs. Hannah broke her leg. Zoe is replacing her." "Ah." In Diana's eyes, something cold flashed. "How thoughtful of you to let family work for you. And I see the daughter is more creative than the mother. All these changes in your house." Zoe clenched her jaw but said nothing. "Zoe has a talent for interior design," Michael said defensively. "She is a student." "Oh, how cute," Diana smiled, but her voice dripped with condescension. "A housekeeper with aspirations. That is very ambitious." Zoe picked up the tray, ready to leave. "Wait," Diana said. "You can bring more sugar. This is too weak." Of course. When Zoe left, Diana leaned toward Michael. "You must be careful with girls like that, Michael." "I am listening." "Young, ambitious girls from poor families." Diana fixed her hair. "They see a man like you, rich, successful, and they have ideas. They might cross professional boundaries." Michael felt anger rising in his chest. "Zoe is not like that." "They are all like that, darling." Diana placed her hand on his. "I know you are lonely, but play carefully. Girls like her, they dream of fairy tale princes, of a life they will never be able to have." At that moment, Zoe returned with the sugar. Her face was pale, her jaw clenched. She had heard everything. She placed the sugar bowl on the table so hard that it clattered. "Will that be all?" she asked. Her voice was strangely flat. "Yes, thank you," Michael replied, looking at her with concern. Zoe nodded and left. An hour later, when Diana finally left, Michael found Zoe in the kitchen packing her things. "What are you doing?" "I am leaving," Zoe said, not looking at him. "Mom is almost healed. She can start working in a week. There is no need for me to be here any longer." "Zoe." What Diana said, she was right. Zoe finally looked at him. In her eyes were tears she refused to let fall. "I do not belong to your world. I never will. I am the daughter of a housekeeper who dreams too big." "That is not true." "It is the truth." Her voice cracked. "And the worst thing is that I fell in love. I fell in love with you, Michael. With a man I can never have. Because for people like Diana, for your world, I will always just be a housekeeper with aspirations." Michael tried to say something, but Zoe raised a hand. "Thank you for these weeks. They were beautiful. But now I must go back to reality." She left a note on the counter, the address where to send the last paycheck, and left. Michael stood in the kitchen, hearing the front door close. The house suddenly became empty, cold, dead, and he did nothing to stop her. Because deep down, in the cowardly part of himself, he wondered if Diana was not right, if he and Zoe could really be together, if it was just a beautiful fantasy destined for failure. He looked at the colorful pillows, the plants, the organization system in his office, all the traces of Zoe in his life. And for the first time in years, Michael Sterling felt what loneliness really was. The week without Zoe was torture. Michael tried to go back to his old life. Work, meetings, contracts, but everything had lost its flavor. The house was clean and tidy, but dead. Delivery food tasted like cardboard. The silence he once valued was now overwhelming. Mrs. Hannah returned to work on Monday, still limping slightly, but stubbornly claiming she was ready. She was even quieter than usual, cleaning with mechanical precision, not looking at him. Michael knew Zoe had told her. He knew Mrs. Hannah was judging him, and she had the right to do so. On Thursday evening, Michael could no longer stand it. He sat in the living room, looking at the pillows Zoe had brought, at the ficus in the corner that she had bought with him at the garden center, laughing at his awkwardness in choosing a pot. "Where is Zoe?" he asked, when Mrs. Hannah passed through the room. The older woman stopped, still not looking at him. "At home. How is she doing?" "Sad." Now Mrs. Hannah looked at him. Her gaze was as sharp as glass. "Because of you." Michael took it like a blow. "I know. You do. You know." Mrs. Hannah set down her bucket and crossed her arms. "Do you know that my daughter has been crying for 3 days? That she does not eat, does not sleep, only studies and works, as if she were trying to work herself to death?" "Mrs. Hannah, no." Her voice was firm. "Now you listen. I have worked for you for 5 years. I was always quiet, professional, invisible, exactly the kind of help you needed. But now I will tell you the truth." Michael was silent, feeling like a student in front of a strict teacher. "My daughter is the best thing that ever happened to you," Mrs. Hannah continued. "She brought life into this tomb. She taught you to laugh, to eat real food, to feel real emotions. And what did you do? You let her go, because you were afraid of what other people would think. It is not that simple. It is exactly that simple." Mrs. Hannah took a step forward. "My daughter is worth more than all your contracts combined. She has a heart, dreams, talent, her own light. If you do not see that, if you let people like that elegant woman in the beige suit tell you who is good enough for you," she paused, shaking her head in disappointment, "then you are rich, successful, and stupid." Very stupid. The words hit Michael like a physical blow. No one had ever spoken to him like that. No one had ever had the courage, and every word was the truth. "You are right," he said quietly. Mrs. Hannah blinked, clearly surprised. "You are absolutely right," Michael repeated, standing up. "I am a coward. I was so busy worrying about what others would think that I did not consider what I really wanted, who I really wanted to be." "And?" Mrs. Hannah asked sharply. "I want to be a man who deserves Zoe." Michael felt something in his chest break, some wall he had been building for years. "A man who is brave enough to fight for her, to tell the whole world that she is the best thing that ever happened to me." Mrs. Hannah looked at him for a long time, assessing him. "So, what are you going to do about it?" she asked finally. Michael looked at his watch. It was 9 o'clock in the evening. Zoe had a shift at the restaurant until 10. "I have to go," he said, already running for his jacket. "I have to tell her now, at the restaurant." Mrs. Hannah raised an eyebrow. "In front of everyone?" "Yes." Michael stopped at the door, turning around. "Because if I do it privately, she might think I am ashamed, that I am hiding our feelings from the world. I must show her I am not ashamed of anything, that I am proud that I love her, and I want everyone to know." For the first time since she returned, Mrs. Hannah smiled. "Then go," she said. "And do not screw it up, Mr. Sterling. You will not get a second chance." "I know." Michael ran out of the house, his heart pounding like crazy. He did not know exactly what he would say. He had no speech or plan. He had only the truth, and the desperate hope that it would be enough. The Golden Dumpling restaurant was full of people. Families at dinner, couples on dates, groups of friends over beer. Michael burst through the doors at 9:30, disheveled, breathless, looking completely different from the elegant businessman everyone knew. He saw her immediately. Zoe was standing at the bar, taking an order, her hair tied in a ponytail, the apron with the restaurant's logo cinching her waist. She looked tired, sad, but still beautiful. "Zoe," he called through the noise of the restaurant. Her head snapped up. When she saw him, her eyes widened in shock. "Michael, what are you—" But he was already walking in her direction, passing surprised customers. The restaurant manager tried to stop him, but Michael ignored him. "I need to talk to you." "I am working." Zoe looked around desperately. "You cannot be here. This cannot wait." Michael stood before her, aware that everyone in the restaurant was watching them, but not caring. "I have to tell you something, Michael. Please." Her voice was pleading. "Do not do this. I love you." The restaurant went completely silent. Even the background music seemed to fade. Zoe stood frozen, holding her notepad with her mouth open in silent shock. "I love you." Michael repeated, louder this time. I love your laughter that fills rooms. I love how you sing off-key and do not care who is listening. I love how you reorganize everything without asking, because you know it can be better. I love your dumplings, your advice about plants, your way of making me feel like a human and not a machine for work. Stop, she whispered, tears flooding her eyes. But Michael continued, the words flowing from him like a river that could not be stopped. I was a coward. I let you go because I was afraid of what others would think. I was afraid that I did not deserve you, that our worlds were too different. He took a step closer. But the truth is, my world without you is empty, cold, and meaningless. A house without your laughter is just a building. Food without your dumplings is just fuel. Life without you is just existence. At that moment, in a desperate gesture, Michael wanted to step even closer, but he knocked over a tray of pierogies that a waiter was carrying. The pierogies flew into the air, landing on the floor with a wet splat. A few landed on his expensive shoes. Someone in the restaurant giggled, then someone else. Soon half the room was laughing. Michael looked at the chaos at his feet, the spilled pierogies, the sauce stain, and for the first time, he did not care. Instead, he looked at Zoe and smiled helplessly. You see, I do not need a housekeeper. I can ruin everything myself. He spread his arms. I need you. Not as a housekeeper, as a partner, as the person who will teach me how to stop being a businessman, a robot, and start being a human. Zoe covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. He did not know if she was crying or laughing. Zoe Miller, Michael said, kneeling on one knee in the middle of the spilled pierogies, not caring that he was ruining his pants. I do not want you to clean my house. I want you to clutter my life in the best possible way. Will you give me a chance? Will you give us a chance? The restaurant waited in suspense. Zoe finally lowered her hands. Her face was wet with tears, but she was smiling. That wide, joyful smile that Michael had come to love. You are the most disorganized, workaholic, impossible man I have ever met, she said. Her voice trembled with emotion. Michael's heart stopped. And I love you too, you fool. She walked up to him, ignoring the pierogies under her feet, and reached out, helping him stand. Then, in front of the whole restaurant, she kissed him. Long, deep, with all the feeling she had suppressed for weeks. The restaurant erupted in applause, whistles and cheers. Someone shouted, "Bravo!" Someone else, "Finally!" When they finally pulled apart, Zoe looked at the chaos around them, the spilled pierogies, the laughing customers, the shocked manager. You will have to help me clean this up, she said with amusement. With pleasure, Michael answered. Starting from now, we will clean up all my messes together. And for the first time in his life, Michael Sterling did not worry about what others thought. He only cared about her. 6 months later, Michael's house was unrecognizable. The walls had warm colors, beiges, creamy yellows, delicate blues. In every room, there were plants. Photographs of Zoe's family hung alongside his own. His parents, her parents, all together, creating a new, expanded family. The living room had colorful pillows that Zoe kept moving, saying she was looking for the perfect composition. Michael's office still had Zoe's colorful organization system, but now a second large table stood there. Her own design desk with fabric samples, furniture catalogs, and sketches scattered everywhere. The design firm, Miller Design, already had a waiting list of clients who wanted Zoe's effect in their homes. Michael invested in the company, but insisted that everything be in her name. Your talent, your business, your success, he said firmly. Every Sunday was sacred. Mrs. Hannah came for dinner, always commenting that finally, someone taught this boy what a real home is. Michael tried making pierogies. They always came out crooked. Some exploded during cooking, but everyone ate them, laughing. At least you are trying, Zoe would say, kissing him on the cheek. Diana tried one more time. She offered Michael a lucrative business partnership. During an elegant dinner, he declined politely. I already have the best partner I could ever want. She reorganizes my life, from the office to my heart. The house, which was once a cold mausoleum of marble, was now full of laughter and music. Zoe still sang off-key while cooking, discussing what color to paint the guest room, and making plans for the future. Sometimes, when Zoe was absorbed in some project, Michael would just stop and look at her, thinking about how close he was to losing her, how he almost chose a lonely, rich, miserable life instead of this chaos, this beautiful, colorful mess that had become his life. "What are you thinking about?" Zoe would ask, catching him staring. "About how you entered my house to clean and ended up cluttering everything in the best possible way." Zoe would laugh, throw a pillow at him, and he would laugh as well. That autumn, they were planning their wedding. Small, in the circle of family, with pierogies instead of a fancy menu. Mrs. Hannah had already started planning. "If you think I will let my daughter get married without proper homemade pierogies, you are crazy." Michael looked at his house full of life, love, laughter, and thought about what Zoe had said once. "A real home is not the walls, it is the people inside." She was right, as always, and he had never been happier. Life, at its core, is rarely a straight line of perfectly ordered events. We often spend our youth and our middle years meticulously constructing walls, both literal and metaphorical, to protect our successes, our routines, and our status. We build these lives of marble and glass, so polished and so sterile, that we become trapped by our own expectations of perfection. We convince ourselves that silence is peace, that routine is safety, and that keeping others at a distance is professional maturity. Yet, as Michael Sterling learned, the most profound joy is not found in the pristine order we force upon our world, but in the beautiful, messy, vibrant intrusion of another human soul. True wisdom often comes from realizing that vulnerability is not a weakness, but the bridge that connects us to what actually matters. When we allow someone into our space, whether it is our home, our office, or our heart, we are inviting the possibility of chaos. But it is precisely in that chaos that life happens. It is in the spilled pierogies on a restaurant floor, the off-key singing in a quiet room, and the unsolicited plants on a stark windowsill that we find the texture of human existence. Many of us spend a lifetime trying to control our circumstances, terrified that if we let our guard down, everything will fall apart. We fear that showing emotion, or allowing someone to see the messy parts of our lives, will make us look less competent or less respectable. But the reality is that the people who hold our lives together are rarely those who respect our boundaries, but those who are brave enough to cross them because they care enough to try. Loving someone, truly loving someone, requires the courage to be unpolished. It requires the humility to admit that, despite all our achievements, we are incomplete without the warmth of another. It asks us to look at the differences between our worlds, be they social, financial, or personal, and decide that they are not barriers, but invitations to grow. When we are older, we do not look back at our perfectly organized spreadsheets or our sterile, silent living rooms. We look back at the moments where we were brave enough to be messy. We look back at the people who taught us to dance when we thought we had 2 left feet, and who fed us when we didn't know we were starving for more than just calories. The lesson is simple but difficult to execute. Stop trying to control the world around you so tightly that you suffocate the life within it. Embrace the clutter of real human connection. Let people in. Let them rearrange your shelves. Let them color your walls. And let them change your song. Because a house is just a structure, but a home is a collection of messy, joyful, imperfect moments shared with the people who make it worth living. Never be afraid to trade your perfect, lonely order for a slightly chaotic, beautiful, and shared reality. That is where life is truly found.